In the year 2010, it appeared the Mega Man franchise was going to keep going for a long time to come, as it had been for 20 plus years prior. We were right off the heels of the release of Mega Man 10, and Capcom had just revealed Mega Man Legends 3, the long-awaited sequel that would finally get Mega Man Volna off the moon. Mega Man Universe, which was likely the closest we would have gotten to an official Mega Man maker. And last but not least, Rockman Online, a Korean-developed MMORPG that looked very promising and had amazing promotional animations. What we didn't realize though, was that a very important man to the Mega Man brand had plans of his own. After expressing frustration with his job, stepfather of Mega Man, KJ Inafune, resigned from Capcom on October 19th, 2010, after being with the company for 23 years, starting out as a character designer and having reached the top of the development structure by the end. This departure came as a shock, not only to the fans of the Blue Bomber, but to the development staff at Capcom as well. In the years to follow, KJ Inafune would go on to form his own company, Concept, and bring together former Mega Man developers, including enlisting the help of NT Creates to work on Mighty No. 9, a game whose Kickstarter campaign had an unprecedented amount of success at the time, but in many eyes, the game itself failed to properly recapture the spirit of the Little Blue Robot's adventures. Because, you see, there is just no replacing the real thing. As for Capcom, we would see the cancellation of all the Mega Man titles that were previously announced, and a long silence thereafter. Except for the ill-received mobile game Rockman Crossover, compilation series, and merchandise, there was no word on a new Mega Man adventure on the horizon for 7 years. But what happened over that 7-year absence? Did Capcom not care about Mega Man after all? Was the departure of Inafune-san that impactful? Well, thanks to the testimonies from the development staff of the recently announced Mega Man 11, we can finally begin to piece together that story. Hello everyone, ShadowRock here with the first video on the information coming out of Game Informer. Originally, I was going to begin by giving you all the gameplay details I could find, but truth be told, GameXplain took practically everything I would have said straight out of my mouth, and then some. So I recommend giving their impressive analysis video a look over if you haven't already. I'll leave a link in the description below. Don't worry though, I'll be back with a summary of everything we know about Mega Man 11 soon enough. Because as much as GameXplain got mostly everything, there is still much more to tell. And yes, I do know about that Mega Man Star Force outfit. Look at it! But today, I want to focus on a more serious topic of discussion, and that is, why did it take so long, over 7 years, for Mega Man to finally make a return? And what are the developers' thought process behind the new Mega Man 11? Many of us heard of the legacy KJ Inafune left behind for the Mega Man franchise. He was one of the 6-man team that worked on the original NES game in 1987, and eventually stepped up to take over the brand itself not long after, ushering the franchise through several console generations, spanning over 100 games, including mainline games and spin-off series too. In fact, if it wasn't for Inafune-san and his team working on Mega Man 2 while off the clock, the Blue Bomber may have been a one and done, never given a second chance. That is why his sudden resignation from Capcom in 2010 truly shook the Mega Man universe, pun intended. Not only for the fans, but for the developers as well. Mega Man 11 producer Kazuhiro Tsukiya had this to say. To be honest with you, when Inafune left, it was a difficult atmosphere within the company. It was difficult for somebody to step up and say, I really want to work on Mega Man. Inafune-san was definitely a brand leader for the franchise. He helped pave the way for its success, and he had a lot of brilliant ideas. That's an absolute truth. So when he left, there was a sense of emptiness and a sense that no one was appropriate to pick up the mantle and pave a new vision for Mega Man. When Inafune-san was still our boss, he said, "Don't let brands stagnate, always keep moving forward." Yes, we did have a 7-year absence, but it doesn't mean that we stayed still. We were always moving forward and trying to figure out what to do next. With the creative mind of Inafune-san gone, the developers at Capcom were without a captain to steer the Mega Man ship forward, and thus, that ship sailed into a thick fog, likely never to be seen again. Now guys, it's true we do meme on the guy sometimes because of Mighty Number 9, but there is no denying what he did for Mega Man as a whole, and how much he meant to the developers at Capcom. During his time there, the man was the core of the whole operation. So, it is in a serious tone that I can say, thanks, Inafune. While the proverbial Mega Man ship was lost at sea though, we questioned and argued amongst ourselves whether Capcom still cared about the blue guy at all. Has there been no games due to their most recent entries not selling well? It's no secret that Mega Man was never a best-selling franchise. In fact, if you look on Capcom's top-selling Mega Man games, the best-selling Mega Man game was Mega Man 2, only at the 49th spot. And according to Capcom Japan's website, only 4 Mega Man games actually sold 1 million copies. The other 3 games being Mega Man Battle Network 4 at 55, Mega Man X at 68, and Mega Man 3 at 77. So, was the developer really going to let one of their most iconic characters which defined them in their early days to just die? Thankfully, there were members within Capcom wondering the same thing. One such developer being Koji Oda. Quote, Oda, "I still feel like this Mega Man is one of the most important pillars of the company. At the end of the day, we asked ourselves, what does Capcom need to do for its fans? Should we toss him aside? I felt like that would be a foolish gesture. Mega Man is such a treasure to the company that it would be a waste to let him go because someone left." Interesting to note that Koji Oda has never been involved with the development of any Mega Man games before. So you know it's bad when someone outside the Mega Man development circles thinks the Blue Robot should come back. At least he was an outsider until now. Over the past 7 years, Capcom has received a few internal pitches, quote unquote, to give Mega Man that E-Tank he really needs. But Oda himself was the first person to receive the green light of approval from the bigwigs over at Capcom. Thus, Koji Oda was selected to direct the next mainline Mega Man game. After a long hiatus, it was time for a mega comeback. To give you some background on the director of Mega Man 11, Koji Oda has been working at Capcom since 1991 on such games such as Super Ghouls and Ghosts, The Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse, Mighty Final Fight, the original Resident Evil, which interestingly started as a Super NES game according to him, Resident Evil 0, Dead Rising Chop Till You Drop, and the 2014 Strider reboot. Oda had this to say on his experience in the 1980s. Sometimes you would buy a game and it would be a kasuge, which literally translates into poopy game. But then there was Capcom, which always had the Capcom logo on it. Those games were always promising. There were no kasuge coming out of Capcom. That was the main reason I decided to apply to work there. I figured that if a company was able to make games that were this fun, it had to be fun to work there. Now Oda would just have to make sure that the next Mega Man game doesn't become a kasuge. When the conceptual phase began, Oda ordered the development staff to replay every mainline Mega Man Classic and Mega Man X game while taking note of the things that made each game special. Oda also started scouring message boards and reading fan surveys from America about their favorite moments. Why America, you ask? Because apparently, Mega Man is the most popular here in the States. Quote, Sukiya. To be honest with you, I don't know why Mega Man is more popular in America. This is just purely speculation, but I think the games where players are able to showcase how good they are, I feel like those games tend to be more popular in the States, and Mega Man is like that. Quote, Oda. It's always interesting reading the feedback from America. It's almost like they're talking about a game that came out yesterday even though it's been so many years. I find it interesting opening up that survey box to see what they have to say. While they did survey America, we also know that Capcom surveyed Japan back in 2016 with the release of the 3DS version of Mega Man Legacy Collection. One of the questions bluntly asking if they would be interested in a Mega Man 11. This was arguably the first sign that the new game was to become a reality, followed by very subtle teases such as Capcom inserting the concept art of Mega Man's new quote-unquote Brickman power, as we're calling him, into Mega Man Legacy Collection 2, inserted under the Mega Man 8 art. Then finally, the announcement of Roll's new design at Tokyo Game Show this year, cleverly under the guise of a Nindoroid figure. Capcom gave the development team freedom to do whatever they wanted with the next Mega Man game, so they came up with several different concepts. Would they make a new Mega Man altogether, or stick with its roots? Quote, Oda, "You could build a mountain of all the different concepts we came up with, but we wanted to make sure that whatever we implemented would maintain that simplicity and durability of gameplay. It's called Mega Man 11, but there was actually a heavy amount of discussion to get us to that point. A lot of us asked, what do we want to call this? Do we want to take it in a brand new direction and call it something totally different? At the end of the day, we decided we wanted to be as straightforward as possible and tell people, this is what you've been waiting for." As part of all the concepts the design team came up with, they also toyed around the idea of redesigning Mega Man. Quote, Koji Oda, "We thought about making him super masculine. We asked ourselves, do we want to make him look super pretty? Do we want to give him some glasses? But ultimately, we decided that none of that was necessary, so we went back to his classic look." Art director for Mega Man 11, Yuji Ishihara, who has been at Capcom since 1995 and has been a part of games such as Mega Man Legends and Mega Man Battle Network, came up with the perfect formula for designing Mega Man. Quote, Ishihara, "I think if you break Mega Man down into 10 points, he has 6 points in cool, 3 points in cute, and 1 point in naive. The resulting new look for Mega Man stays true to himself, while adding elements that reference his designs as seen in Super Smash Bros. 4, he also appears taller, leaner, and slightly more mature. Other characters have gotten redesigns as well, including Roll, Rush, some new and old enemies, and as recently revealed in Famitsu, Dr. Wily, who's looking quite spiffy with that red tie. When the concepts had been fleshed out, it was time to build a team that would bring their ideas to life. Oda pulled some strings around Capcom and handpicked a few of his favorite designers. In the latest Game Informer video, the two lead developers mentioned that they have a good mix of Mega Man veterans, industry veterans who have never worked on a Mega Man game itself, and young developers who grew up with Mega Man and wanted to work on a new game in the series. So you have a wide variety of perspectives. Oddly though, many of them were hesitant to work on a new Mega Man game. Now why could that be? Quote, Sukiya, "I think some of that doubt stems from the fact that Mega Man has such a long history. It's been 30 years in the making, and Mega Man has such a core fan base. I think that when you have a dedicated fan base, the expectation to deliver is that much higher. When you have a franchise like this that has had more than a 7-year absence, that hole of expectation is so big that you have to ask yourself, can that hole be filled? Can we actually meet people's expectations?" Speaking of expectations, we remember how Mega Man 9 and 10 went back to the 8-bit style. And while it was cool at first, admittedly it got stale the second time around for some people. Director Koji Oda was thinking the same and decided it was finally time to move forward. They took their favorite levels from Mega Man 5 and 10 and redesigned them into a new art style as you see in the game. This helped the team make sure that the new art style was fitting to Mega Man's classic gameplay, which of course is an integral part to the series. Quote, Oda, "Late in the series, we had heightened the animation quality so much that it actually impeded the controls, and it was less intuitive to figure out combat timings. That was a hurdle that we had to tackle for this. That was something I felt we had to address, because by pushing the visuals forward, I felt we risked taking a step back in gameplay. One of the biggest things I learned in my time in games is mastering the controls. No matter how good the visuals are, or how good the sounds are, at the end of the day, if you pick up and play the game, and it doesn't feel right, then it's a failure." Oof! Is that another jab at Mighty Number 9 I just heard? I mean, Mega Man 11 itself looks like a giant punch to begin with anyways. Calm down guys. All joking aside, it sounds like Koji Oda's mind is in the right place regarding the controls. But what did Game Informer feel about the demo that they played? Fortunately, they report that the controls feel as tight and precise as the 8-bit games, despite the new visuals, which is wonderful to hear. The charge shot and slide maneuvers also return, with the developers considering having the slide on one button instead of the combo of down and jump. And they also mention how 70% of the new enemies in the game are gonna be brand new, with the other 30% of enemies being old favorites. It really seems like Koji Oda and his team are aiming to put everything they've learned from 30 years of Mega Man games into Mega Man 11, and not just pandering to Mega Man 2 like the last two entries did. And I gotta say, I like the way this man thinks. Reading these interviews honestly gets me a little giddy, because what I'm hearing about here is a team that knows exactly what they're doing, and that they are in tune with the needs and wants of the Mega Man fans. And I couldn't ask for more from the next all-star Mega Man development team. Let's hope that Mega Man 11 turns out as good as it looks, and paves the way for a true revival of the franchise. Mega Man is back in 2018, and I can't wait. We have already touched on some details today, but I will be back with a full report on everything we know about Mega Man 11 itself, so please look forward to it. I have been ShadowRock, and for more on Mega Man 11 and other things Mega Man, you're already in the right place at ShadowRockZX. Thanks for watching, and rock on! This is definitely not just a trial balloon. We're definitely not experimenting. We don't even have the bandwidth to experiment. This is about pouring everything we have and everything we know into one project and making it happen. We're using our prior experience and knowledge to strengthen ourselves and reach the next level. From the start of the project, I've been saying, Mega Man 11 needs to be a true resurrection of the franchise. Kazuhiro Sukiya.